great to connect with you and have you on the podcast. How are you doing today?
Doing well. Good Monday. Good way to start a Monday morning.
Yeah, no, that's it. And it's great to connect with you. And I just thought I'd kind of introduce you and kind of into the podcast because you're in the business of like consumer products. Because you do like full service consumer product development. And do you mind kind of going into that, or kind of how you kind of got into it?
Yeah, so we do. I've got a team of industrial designers, engineers, and then I got a business partner, Nate, that runs a team in China as well, where he focuses on the manufacturing side of things, where we'll help manage projects, manage factories, find factories, quality control, stuff like that. So we really help, whether it's inventors or founders or existing, consumer product business owners, build out new products and get it all the way through the design process, engineering process, prototyping, engineering and for manufacturing, and then in manufacturing, sourcing, and quality control. So we really go from A to Z on making consumer products.
That's awesome. And I remember like when we first touched base, you was talking about how rewarding it is, to have a product. And we talked about like the process of like, the beginning of the product and, the end result of having it on the shelf, and, the rewards within that of other people's efforts that go into making it, and, all those stages that kind of add on together.
Yeah, I mean, and it's crazy to think about in the sense of that, like everything around us, has gone through this process or something similar, right? Like everything you interact with on a day by day, physically, well, and with software too. We don't do software, but it's like, yeah, when you pick something up or something you use every day, they go through this process where they have the creative side of things, where they get to do the sketching and design and aesthetics and user experience type stuff. And then they go into engineering and they have to solve all the problems of making it work together and all that. But yeah, pretty much everything around you is developed in that way. And so it's nice to go through that. And then when you go through that process, you build this relationship with the product, you build it with the client, right? And it's like really exciting when one of the ones we talked about was like you go to a store, like in the US we got Target, and you walk down an aisle and you see a product that you worked on in its glory sitting on a shelf. It's so satisfying. And it's a really neat experience to see that thing that you worked on in person, right? And see it available for sale. So
Yeah.
when that's what we see as a win.
Yeah, no, that's it. And I think it's quite, motivating, isn't it? In that kind of line of work to kind of, put your efforts into something and see it grow and to develop, and then you've got like the final result. And I think like a lot of the time we don't kind of think about that process. I think like you said, we just get something, and then there's that process to that thing getting to that final stage. It's like but off topic, I've got like a speaker here, like it's like a light up speaker, and there's a hook on the top. But you think to it, there's been a process for that to be made. There's a speaker in it, there's a light, there's wires, and as simple as it is, there's that kind of complex process to build it, isn't it? For example, but like, have you kind of always kind of wanted to get into this kind of line of work, or entrepreneurship? Where's the kind of spark for that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think I had like a natural itch to, get into something like this, right? As a kid, my thing was always taking things apart and seeing what was inside and how it worked, and I think that got, the engineering side of it inspired that, right? Where I would always like, it was just always interesting to see what was inside. You get a toy and you see how it works, how this mechanism does that. There's an electronic board in there. Like, what does that do? Blah, 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 all those little details. So that always intrigued me at a very young age. And then later, when I got to, go to school, I ended up at a small engineering school in Georgia. And, I was really fortunate that, I was not a great student, right? So the fact that I even got into school was exciting, but I'm grateful that the school, and this is where it almost like lined up and the stars aligned for me. And I'm very grateful that this happened in the order that it happened. But I ended up at this engineering school, and not only did I meet like, some fantastic friends that I still am grateful for, but it's like, the experience that I got in there was very hands-on, and very technical. I got to learn a lot about the 3D modeling software that I use and my team now uses. I got to learn a lot about manufacturing processes and apply, what, just, and I remember even sitting in classes and always thinking back, learning about a manufacturing process to those toys I would take apart and knowing, oh yeah, that's how that toy was made, when I was a kid, right? And then the entrepreneurial side of it came when, about my junior or so year in college, there was a bar my buddies and I would go to, and they had a concert venue. And what I would start to do is I would pitch the bar owner if I can rent that out and run events there, and I would try to throw parties and concerts and stuff like that. And I would make a side income doing that. And that was like my first taste of entrepreneurship, right? Because I was kind of like, just kind of made that happen myself. And how to pull pieces together and execute on it. And then you see that first chunk of change. It's like, okay, not bad. And then you get, yeah, so that was my first taste. And then to get more refined on it, you know, I moved to Utah, right, randomly. So I literally packed my bags, my car, everything I could fit in there. I got in and drove across the country to Utah. It's like a 31-hour drive. I think I did it in like 2 or 3 days or something. It was really eye-opening, cool experience to like do that cross-country leap, right? Showed up in Utah, didn't have a job, got a job at a ski resort and ski bummed it for a year, snowboarding, which is awesome. Like I always am grateful that I took that year to mentally get ready for what that leap might be or whatever that thing might be. And then I got a job in a sales position at a company called Armor Active. And that company made tablet and iPad enclosures. And it's so random. Found them on like Craigslist, online, just like just a job posting for a sales role. I hit them up, and then as I started working there, within a month, these calls would come in from these big companies because they had the domain iPadEnclosures.com, right? So this is right when the iPad came out, or it was pretty fresh. So people would search iPad security enclosure or something, right? And we would pop up, and we had this metal box that you could like lock onto a wall, so you can mount a touch interface in a store, a point of sale system, museums, airports, whatever the hell. You see them all the time now, right? You see touch interfaces all over in everyday environments. And so we started getting these calls, and the sales were all inbound. People were hungry for these devices. And then I would get calls from big companies like IBM. And I remember one time this guy from IBM calls, and I'm like, we don't have a product that gives you what you need right now, but I think I can make it for you. I have an engineering background. I'd love to, just whip something up and see if we can make something happen here. And I would go home and I would CAD up and 3D model this enclosure that worked and satisfied his needs. And then I would go the next day to Scott, who's the CEO, and now he's my mentor. And, we could talk about that, but, and I pitched Scott. I'm like, Scott, IBM called yesterday. He wanted this enclosure. I designed it last night. I'd love it if you could help me like pitch him and see if we can close a big deal that's custom. We have done that. And he got excited. And then, yeah, we pitched it. We didn't get that deal, but, what happened is I became the engineer in the company. I got to build out, a team. I got Ken by my side. He was a technical guy, so him and I would work together. I would do all the engineering. He would work with the manufacturers and we would collaborate with sales team and develop these products. And it was awesome, right? So I had that for a couple of years, getting exposure to creating these products and listening to customers, understanding what they wanted, stepping back, creating something, pitching them, and then closing these product deals, and working with sales and marketing and all these different departments and manufacturers. And I got all this experience and all this exposure working on building processes. So, 2 or so years into that, I was able to, that company sold, right? So then, when that company sold, I was like, okay, Scott, I don't want to work here anymore. I want to start my own thing, and to be honest, he paid me poorly at the time, because I was, I was a young engineer. But I was like, okay, I need you to buy me a computer, a 3D printer, and some software. And it's expensive, to just take a leap when you're fresh out of, just like a junior level engineer. So he did it. I gave him a piece of the company Klugonics. And 7 years later, we're at where we're at today. But I basically left that job and then started making stuff out of my 1-bedroom apartment, and just hustling it. So I was doing sales, engineering, all this at the same time. And now we've got a really refined process and a good sized team, and just still making stuff today.
That's great.
Yeah.
What it's incredible, like you said, how you kind of like you took that leap and just decided to travel across country, just do it, and kind of find your way, doing different jobs in the meantime, and then get involved. It's crazy how it kind of dominoes into all these different experiences and leads on to another thing, and that you've been able to like throw yourself into the unknown, into these experiences where you've been able to grow and like learn different skills in marketing and how the business kind of works, and to kind of use that and then be like I want to do my own thing. And it's pretty I said incredible how you can build as well, that you mentioned like the customer and how seeing how what their view on it is. Like, would you say as well that's probably really important, isn't it, in business, and probably where some businesses go wrong, where they don't kind of ask the customer what it is and their opinion on it, that research. That's probably the core principle of it.
Yeah, and that is something definitely that is developed over time, to get better and better. And honestly, now I'm grateful because I have like team members that are better than me, right? So like for example, so the systems and processes that we take a project through, Alyssa has built out. She's my director of operations, lead PM. She'll we have all this software that organize projects, timelines, hour management, resource management, all that stuff in this software bundle. And then and then Aaron, and that was kind of built off my theoretical, what I used to do, but very sloppily and unorganized, because I was just like a one-man band that's ADD and not very organized. And she's helped me like really refine that. That's refined over the years. And then Aaron is our creative director. He refined our creative process. So we call the ideation phase. That's what all projects start with. It's like the creative exploration. And he's created this, process where we take a client through a questionnaire. We unravel their idea and their project and their goals with it and all that stuff. And we get an idea of things down to like the aesthetic and what it should look like and what it should function like and what problems is it solving. And then also he'll dig in and look at competitive landscape and see what's already out there and get an idea of who this user is going to be, like who's going to be buying this product and how we can appeal to that and what is already appealing to that type of customer. So he's created that type of this, this in-depth, upfront process. And it's like, before what I would do is I would just ask random questions, but I've noticed now that he's created this organized process, and then that organized process ties in with Alyssa's project management process. It's so effective now of how we're able to uncover what a project is and then carry it through, the engineering and so on and so forth.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And I think, like you said, it must be like, vital, in that line of work as well, to have, those people that you can rely on, those people that you can trust as well to do these things as well.
Yeah.
And like you mentioned earlier, like that guy called Scott, and how he's a mentor, and like, would you say that he's kind of had like a big impact and like helped you kind of like within this line of work as well?
Yeah, I mean, well, first he gave me the opportunity to to work at his job, as an employee to him. Like he gave me a good bit of freedom there where I got to, I started some side projects, and he was supportive of it. He would just allow me to do that type of stuff. So that was helpful, right? He gave me the tools and gave me the experience, and let me, you know, learn and get some trial and error under his, payroll, right? So that was helpful. And then ever since then, now, 7 years later, well, I've known him now for like 9 years, but 7 years later, I mean, him and I still talk, once or twice a week, sometimes more. And he's involved in a lot of the projects that I've gone on, as an investor. And yeah, he's definitely helped. He's helped give that initial push to show me that it's okay to take that kind of risk,
Mm, mm.
and has helped me when I hit walls and stuff earlier on, and it's like, yeah, so he's been there in that sense. And now I almost see it where it's like him and I have become these peers where, now he's still see him as a mentor, but also like at some levels a peer in a way, because all the experience that I've gathered, we're able to, even start projects together ourselves, versus being a kid asking him for investment money. Now it's more about, what could we do on the side together possibly.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. Like, would you say like in business as well, like, it's important to have, like role models and people that can kind of assist you along the way? Because I think like in life, especially like in business, I mean, there's a lot of risks, isn't there? There's a lot of things that can go wrong. And I think, through those mistakes, I think that's probably, a big learning process as well, and helps you to, to become better as a person.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it's crucial. Yeah. I mean, even, and yeah, Scott is one of the mentor like roles, but yeah, I have other, people I could lean on that are mentor that have, much more experience, that have different types of experience, like even, for example, Durai Home is a consumer product brand I started with all these resources. I started that with my fiance, Kelsey. And well, technically, her and I should be married now, but COVID has pushed our wedding back a year. But,
yeah,
on paper, we'll be married, but we're not. Still, I see her as a fiance because we haven't done the big ceremony, right?
yeah,
But her and I started a direct consumer brand, and her background is in strategy, brand development, all that stuff. And we could, that's it's another conversation. But with that, we started this company, and with that is the first time I've like actually done and built a fundraising round, and we raised some capital to invest in the tooling and onboard manufacturing, all that stuff, and all those expenses with IP, patent work, all that stuff. And in that process, her dad has a background in finance and accounting background, and he's also started companies with, been a co-founder in some companies. So he's an example of like a mentor that is added a lot of value on the financial side of things, and how to manage a budget on this much more complex type business with inventory and stuff like that. And then I've got one of the other investors in that company. He had some success in his life, and he's much older in transactions with dealing with like exits and stuff like that. So I've had conversations with him where he's added so much value in just like an hour-long conversation about things I should think about if I'm going to sell one of these companies or one of these brands and stuff that I'm building on the side. And yeah, so there's mentorship all over the place, and I love, even if it's you talk to them for 2 hours over the span of a year, if you touch base an hour this time and that time, I feel like I walk away with learning from their mistakes, with things that I wouldn't know to do if I was going into something new with a transaction or a new, whatever it might be.
Mm.
Um, it's always been incredibly valuable to just have a variety of mindsets to lean on and experiences to lean on.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think they're really good points. And I think, like you said, you're able to, connect with these people, and, even if you like speak to them for an hour, you can take so much value from them because they have all this experience, and they've been in that place where they can say to you, this is what you need to do. And I think that's like really important as well. And the right kind of role models as well, isn't it? And those kind of people in your kind of tribe who are going to support you in what you're doing as well.
Yeah, I think it's totally crucial.
Like, sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say that and then that awkward conversation of like saying asking someone to be their mentor or whatever. Sometimes you don't even have to have that.
Mm,
Sometimes it's just like, hey, can I pick your brain?
yeah.
And and a lot of times, especially someone that's older and have already had success in their life, and they see you hustling it, or you're working hard to achieve your dreams. Like 99% of the time, they're gonna be like, yeah, let's chat. So it's like and a lot of these people that I mentioned, I haven't really had to like ask them directly, like, will you be my mentor? It's like sometimes it's just as easy as just shooting them a text saying, hey, can we talk this afternoon? I'm going through this. I'm wondering if you can help me. And you know, pretty much every time they've always been willing to do that. And if they aren't willing to do that, which I haven't experienced that, usually just means they're just not the right mentor, right? So it's like, it doesn't hurt to just ask for a hour-long conversation and set the expectation of, hey, I need help with this thing I'm going through. you know, they're more than likely going to say yes. It's just sometimes it's
Mm,
hard to ask that, or you have to kind of humble yourself to do that, which definitely is not something I
yeah.
did early on. It took me a while to humble myself to get to that point.
Yeah. I think
So
that's a really good point as well. And I think like people sometimes we could be like I said, fearful of asking for advice. We kind of want to feel, I don't know, part of us sometimes wants to feel like we've got it together. I think probably sometimes, and
yeah,
I do that as well. And I think it does help, just by you know them providing you that value. And I think as well, if people ask you questions in the future, you can then draw from your experience and help them. You know what I mean? With
oh, yeah.
whatever it is.
Oh, I do that all the time, even now, like just because of the last 7 years of like being on my own and like building a team and figuring out financials and cash flow, and then figuring out fundraising, and working with Kelsey to build a brand, and just all that stuff. um so it happens all the time where I just spend time on the phone client talking about stuff other than product development, because at the end of the day I want them to be successful. Otherwise what we're doing is pointless. So I feel like I give back like that a lot, and I like to do that. I like to have those
Mm,
conversations. They're good for me mentally to like stretch my brain and work the brain muscle anyway, and even remind myself of stuff I've had to go through and figure out. And then when it works for them, it's like
mm,
satisfying to see them become successful because advice I might have given them. And yeah, so that it's like, yeah, for sure, give back. I love it. And I hope one day I'm an old man that's very, successful, and is, sitting on the other side of the startup realm, right? And you know, I just want to be an old wise man in a chair that does mentor meetings with young entrepreneurs that I can give back to, like I've
mm.
received.
Yeah. No, exactly. I think that's definitely, where it's at, isn't it? Providing value to other people and looking at yourself down the line, where you want to be, and,
Yeah.
knowing that you've helped other people. And bit of a random question I just thought of right now is that, in like the business world, and there's nothing wrong with the corporate world, but I'm saying sometimes people can fear sometimes probably reaching out to the boss,
Oh
or
yeah.
the CEO.
Hmm.
And do you like a bit like Gary Vee's approach? He's quite like open to it, and I think like from what you're saying, you're pretty open as well. And do you think that's something that's important? You know, that people can reach out to the boss or the CEO to
Yeah.
shoot them a question.
I think if you're working in an environment that's not like accessible, then you're in a bad work environment. And for example, last week we had my team review meetings, and that's like annual review. And walking away from that, just to hear the team say how supported they feel from everybody, how yeah, just happy everybody is, and how they miss working together, because we've obviously been working remote since COVID really hit. We still have an office, we just only go there as needed type situation. But to hear everybody say how they miss being in the office, because it's easy for them to turn heads and just chat, and having to do video calls and stuff like that instead. But yeah, I'm grateful that I feel like I built that environment on my team, where it's like, I have no problem spending time just talking to someone to help them work through a problem, as like a mentor type role. But also, I feel like, even the, like, Aaron, our creative director, and Izzy, one of our industrial designers, I see them, her going to him all the time, and like, and Ed, our lead engineer, and, new engineers coming in. Like, I feel like that environment is like why we've become so successful. So I think it's incredibly valuable. And that whole corporate environment that I hear about, like people that work those big corporate jobs where they have a someone above them that almost creates like this barrier. And that person above them might have an ego, or they're protective, and they don't have that like welcoming you know just like vibe they give off, right? Like I couldn't imagine being in an environment like that, where you don't feel like you could go to your boss for help, where they're just like get this done. And I've heard about scenarios like that where it's just a toxic environment. And it's like, if you're in that environment, not only is that not good for you and your growth and where you're going in the future, it's like an unhealthy environment to be in, even like mentally, right? Like you almost, it's like they put this bubble over you, and they're not adding enough value into the bubble to grow you, right? Like at the end of the day, you want to be able to move up and
Flourish, yeah.
grow as a human, so it's like, yeah, I don't think that like, I don't think that's a good place to be. And it's worth pivoting if you feel like you're in that scenario.
Yeah, yeah, no, definitely. I think that's something that that's something that I was in the past. I was in this position in a hotel somewhere, and I remember I wasn't feeling too good, and I went to the manager to talk about it, and it was very much like, on a scale to 1 to 10, how important is it? And they kind of almost made me not want to share it and feel like it wasn't, able to share it. So I think, like you said, it's heavily important to have that approach. And I think when people are happy, I suppose, in their job, they're going to work better as well,
Right.
and it gets more, it's more beneficial for the company as well as the people as well. So it kind of goes hand in hand, I suppose.
Yeah. And to that point, it's like, yeah, that's like what I feel like my role these days as a leader. It's like, I just want to make sure everybody's happy, right? Like, and if I'm doing that, I feel like the first checklist on my things to do is like successful, right? Like I like to see, people just happy and grateful and stuff like that. And, when it comes to like a corporate environment where there's many more layers and stuff like that, I feel like if there's someone that's like middle management and they're not making their team below them happy, think about how much better that middle management person would look if someone from above came down and interviewed some of those people down below and saying how grateful they are for their boss, and like, oh, they helped me in this way, and I'm just so happy to be working with them. That's the mindset that middle managers should have, not, creating a barrier so they protect their position. And you know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
and but I feel like everything's changing in that sense, right? I feel like, you know, like 10, 15 years from now, that whole mentality, which is probably how things used to be in the 90s, 80s, or whatever before, is going to fade out because it's just not, it ruins all kinds of layers of the business if it's like that. So yeah, I hope it just, that style of management and just goes away.
Yeah. I think a lot of companies are proving this as well. Like, I'm trying to think of a few names. I can't think of any right now. There's a lot of companies out there who are kind of going for that approach, and I think it's definitely kind of outgrowing, that kind of old kind of approach, to how businesses kind of used to always run.
Yeah.
And I think especially during COVID, I think during this time and mental health and all of those things kind of come into play as well.
Yeah.
Like, do you have any like favorite books you would say? Or
Yeah, I mean, I got in me, I'm more of like an audio book guy. I haven't been listening to books as much as like podcasts. But I did pull up just some of the books that I've read that I felt like I enjoyed. And then some of the books that I have up ahead that I want to read. You know, so like one of the books that I had on here, and this is kind of funny. It's more of a funny book that you get some like motivation from, but it's not necessarily it's satirical, right? It's I don't know if you've seen the show Entourage. Have you seen that show?
I've heard of it.
Yeah, so there's a character in there. His name's Ari Gold, and he's he's like the lead producer or like the production company head type position, or like a management agency type position, right? And he's like the most aggressive guy in Hollywood, right? But he wrote a book under that character, of the show, Ari Gold's The Gold Standard. And some things I don't agree with. Like I think he was obviously he's a character on TV and stuff, but then there was like a lot of takeaways about just like, just hustling and getting things done and all that stuff that I liked about it, and that I thought were entertaining and you kind of smile about. So that was a good one. Another book that I did at the beginning of this quarantine. I did like a mentorship leadership group type scenario where you read some books and you go through and talk about them as a group, and I enjoyed that. And one of the books in that it was called Goals by Brian Tracy. And it's kind of like an old school book. It's not like the most exciting read, but the thing about it that I had a lot of takeaways of things that I still find myself doing on a weekly basis. Like, for example, Fridays before the day ends, I like to jot some notes down of things that maybe I didn't finish this week, or, I want to set as goals for the following week. And as a way to like kind of check out for the weekend, knowing that I've, set these standards in stone for the following week. I thought that was a good one. Some of the upcoming books, I want to read the Barack Obama book. And then I want to read Matthew McConaughey's Greenlight book, just for some entertaining story time. But I like his style, and a lot of the interviews that I heard of him about his book, it sounds like it's a good read. So that's the main ones that I've got that I can.
No, that sounds really good. I think it's important to read, and I think, well, if you can't read, then there's like audiobooks as well, and podcasts, and I think it's important to draw from those, because they're really beneficial and you can kind of apply them to your life as well. And that Greenlight's book sounds really good as well. I saw his he was interviewed by Gary Vee, and I saw him on Joe Rogan a little bit as well. I kind of like his approach, as you said. He's got like his own kind of mindset on things as well.
Yeah, I agree.
Like as well, like how do you kind of like deal with like kind of like pressure of being a leader? Like a CEO. Like, do you have like your own kind of way of dealing with it? Because I think like some people can kind of get burnt out. It's kind of like being quite probably self-aware.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, of course, burnout is that's just, part of it, and managing it, I think, and being conscious of it is important. And sometimes you do kind of just have to like know when to turn off. But I am, the way my brain works, like stress and stuff. Like, yes, I get stress, but I think I manage it well. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that like early on, I went through like a lot of startup stresses, right? And I just had to suck it up and get through it. And I kept doing it. And then on the other side, you look back and you go, okay, that wasn't that bad. I made it through. And then that keeps happening, and the scenarios get bigger and smaller. And then, eventually you just kind of get used to it and realize that, you know what, you're like a month from now, this is going to be behind you, right? And you just have to sometimes remind yourself of that. And then when it comes to being a leader, it's like team reviews last week, for example, the after a year of working, and this has been tough too with COVID and having to keep a company culture. The culture is very important to that leadership role that I have, right? Where it's like, but it's been tough when you have new team members that have started up during this COVID thing and we're remote. And, we used to work as a team in the office together, and we built like a family relationship type environment. And it's like, so it's hard to definitely have the new people feel like that, but I feel like even hearing them, it's been in the reviews, like even with COVID, just to hear them, like even with COVID, I feel like, I feel like I'm becoming a part of that, and that's really rewarding and good. But also I know that that's because of my other team members that have been around for a while, sharing that same vibe and feeling. And, so I do feel like as a leader, just making sure everybody's happy, but then also making sure that the team members that are at the top, are also have that same theory, and are also making sure everybody's happy, and that gung-ho work ethic and stuff like that. It's like, it's almost like you just want to make sure that everybody's in line with that, and then the culture will line up. I do feel like sometimes you get like bombarded with a lot of requests and stuff like that. So, I sometimes feel myself almost like, when I have a lot of stuff going on, a lot of things to reply to, sometimes I just go the rapid fire approach, where it's like, it's better to give them a short, brief answer that solves the problem than it is to not respond and wait to respond, because, I don't want to spend, a ton of time drafting up this whole thing. Or sometimes it's like, with COVID, and this used to be in the office too, sometimes it's better to just go, okay, let's jump on a call, quick chat through it, quick conversation, boom, you're good, awesome, and trying to make sure that that's happening versus letting someone sit there and feel like, that's creating a barrier from them hitting a goal that they're working on at that moment. And I feel like, well, I don't know if I don't think that stresses me out, so as like a leader, I feel like, as long as I've got a team. And you also, one thing that I also do to get rid of that stress is I trust my team with everything, like I don't like to micromanage everything. So it's like, I know, like, even the younger team members that are new, like I'd rather let them go and, work through something, a problem, sync up with them towards the end, or 3/4 of the way through, see where they're at, versus like micromanage them. Because if I give that trust to them over and over again, not only does that let them make some mistakes, which is like, you gotta, let that happen. It's not, and I'm not the type of person that if this mistake is gonna happen, it's like, it is what it is, you'll figure it out. But almost like, trusting them, letting them know that they're trusted by, just kind of letting them run with it, see what happens. And then, that takes a lot of pressure off me too, versus having to make sure everything's perfect in every single nook and cranny of the business. It's like, that would just destroy me from the inside. And then I think that's healthy for the team member too, because if the team member feels trusted, they're going to do better work, and they're going to be more proud of what they work on. And then they're not going to feel the pressure from, internal on the, on us. Yeah, they'll feel some pressure from the client, but also, I mean, that's okay too. It's like, that experiencing that is what makes everybody stronger, but yeah.
I think that's really key what you just mentioned. With everything you just said, and I think, like you said, with trust, I mean, as well, that's like definitely key. I think in relationships and business, isn't it? And the people that you work with, and if they know that you trust them and their capabilities, then they're going to feel confident, and they're going to not have that kind of immense pressure on them as
Hmm.
well. And I think you've got by the sounds of it, like a really good way of working and kind of dealing with things, because I think I've worked in places where the boss comes in or the owner comes in and people panic.
Yeah.
And it's
I
like,
don't Yeah, that's not a good way to be, right?
and I think it's great that you've got that approach to to your work and that relationship with the people, and your, like you said, you mentioned, like you're doing all the Zoom calls now because of COVID. And you have the office space as well, but you're listening to the people and how they are, and willing to put that time into network with them and see where they're at. Because I think then as well, I suppose, if there is something going on, it doesn't give that time for it to build and fester and then become like a large issue, and just accepting that things go wrong, things happen, and they're
Yep.
comfortable with knowing that. And I think you said that, about pressure as well. Like, it's kind of healthy, kind of to have that pressure sometimes, because it's that driver almost. It's like before you go for an interview or something, those nerves.
Yeah. Yeah. I think eliminating that is like, yeah, I don't ever want to be, I want, and this is something I actually think I learned from Scott, where, when he'd walk into a room, everybody would be excited to see him. And, like, here's our fearless leader, walking it, um, so I think just that, seeing that in that environment and how the culture of that company, everybody was there together to like build it up. So that's another part of value that I got out of working there before I started my own thing. But yeah, that's no matter how big, the companies I'm working on get, I want to make sure that, I can walk in somewhere and I don't want that. I don't want that, like, uh-oh, you know, he's here, like, everybody clean off your desk and open up your work and, look busy, kind of thing. know, I'd rather it be like, oh, you're here. I want to talk to you about this. Maybe you can help me a little bit, or you know what I mean? Like, I want that
Yeah.
vibe. And whoever else is in management on my team, I want the same. I want them that way too. Which the team I have now, I'm confident that as we grow, it's going to be like that. That's just, they have the same mindset, persona, and the energy they
Mm,
put off. So
mm,
great.
yeah. Yeah. No, that's definitely key, and I think that's a really good point as well. And like, I kind of went over like kind of role models with you at the start, but would you say, like, kind of growing up or even now, kind of the role models you have, like, personally or professionally?
What do you mean? Oh, role models.
Yeah, like mentors and role models.
Let's see. Well, I have a mixture of them, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
some of the ones that I talked about already that are mentors are also like role models.
Mm,
Some of the things too, like for example, not necessarily in the business side of things, but just how to treat people. Like my dad was always I've never met anybody that like doesn't like my dad because he's so friendly.
mm,
And he's just always, he cares about everybody around him, and has always been very genuine and nice. And I feel like that's been something that has trickled down to me that I use, and I try to make sure that I am that way, because it's like, you know I just, if I'm, people like to be around me and all that stuff, it's like, that's, yeah, that's like, oh, that to my dad, he's that way and he always has been, and I always looked up to that.
mm.
And then let's see. So that, yeah, that's definitely a big one there. I'm trying to think of other role models when it comes to even like celebrities and stuff like that. Um, let's see. I think one that lately that I've been listening to a lot is like, even um, Dax Shepard in Armchair Expert. You listen to his podcast? Yeah.
No, no, no. I'll check it out. What's his name?
Dax Shepard. So it's Kristen Bell's wife. Kristen Bell's she's a pretty big actress, and then Dax Shepard has an acting career as well, but he's done a great job building up a podcast that
Yeah.
always has great content. He's worth listening to. But some of the things about him that I like, it's like, just as him and Kristen, the way they live their lives as celebrity, right? Because a celebrity, usually they're, they hide their problems, and they put this facade in front of them. Them as a couple, and Kelsey and I are both big fans.
Mm.
They're so honest about everything, their therapy, their things that they experience at home, problems they have. He recently had he's been sober for like 16 years, and he recently had kind of a relapse with medication, and completely opened up about it, and because he's a big advocate of, like, Alcoholics Anonymous program, and was like open about it, and just like, having people like that in our society, and especially influencers at his level, where millions and millions of people listen to him. I think that's good for the culture of humans these days, because it's like more people are okay opening up about that type of stuff, and searching for resources, and not being afraid to talk about a problem they could be experiencing, knowing that they can get a solution and not be judged. So I feel like people like him help influence that new direction of just eliminating the fear of being confident to talk about something like that, or other problems like that, right? So I think he's a good role model. um, and those are the main ones that come to mind.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And I think like it's important to have role models because you can draw from their qualities and kind of, vibe, go onto that vibe and, trying to be like them, or, trying to take their lessons and apply it to, your life and things like that. And I think, like, as you mentioned, like your dad, like being genuine and open, is something that's important as well, because I think if you're not being yourself, then people are going to see that, and people are going to respect you for being genuine. And
Yep.
like you said, with celebrities and opening up about their issues, I think it makes people respect you more, doesn't it, as a person, if you talk about things and you own it. You're not trying to be something that you're not, because
Yeah.
we're all human at the end of the day.
it,
And
it changes that ego, right? That ego of you know like just being like, well, just humbling yourself, and like putting that aside and being okay with it. And that's, I mean, I haven't always been that
yeah,
type. My ego used to get my way, especially when I was starting my career. And but these days I've realized, and those people like reiterate and show that it's like, you know current time, this age, like, you just got to check that ego at the door and be
mm,
okay, talking about it and stuff like that. And yeah, so I'm just grateful that that's where things are going in the human race, right? It's like,
yeah, yeah.
so
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think as well, like I won't go too much on about it, but when I was at school and things like that, I had like a massive ego as a teenager, and you can see the difference. You notice it in people because you've probably been in that place. You see it, you can kind of identify with it.
mhm.
But I think it's it's definitely, I think it's more beneficial if you are more in check with your ego, then you notice it. I think, we're only human, and at the end of the day, we all have an ego, and it's like kind of having that balance, isn't it? I might be driving my car sometimes and I've got the music on, and my ego might inflate a little bit, and I notice it, and I'm like, okay, so,
Yeah.
I can't like, I can't
I
like that,
I have to check myself as well sometimes. Yeah, it's just, so there's that there. Yeah, I'm not perfect now, but it's like,
yeah,
you become more aware of it, right? That's the good thing, in the right direction to be heading, when you're aware of it, and you can kind of go, oh, maybe I should
mm,
check myself a little bit, and that's, I think, new almost in a way to
Yeah.
more and more people.
Yeah, that's it. And I think as well, like, are you okay for time, by the way?
Oh yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, it's like, as a leader as well, like, if you, especially if you've got investments and things like that, I suppose, your actions can kind of have an effect, because it's like, Elon Musk. But then if you went, he went on Joe Rogan's podcast and he smoked, and
Yeah.
his stocks, his share price went down just from that, or certain things that you engage in. So I suppose as well, you have to be very, like, careful, kind of, what you do, and
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
But I also think too, I think that is also starting to change in a way, because like you
Yeah,
have people like Elon Musk doing something like that and then showing, yeah, it dropped, but it definitely like
yeah,
recovered. It's like, so you have some people like looking at that as like a bad thing, but then you have some people like, you know what, that's good that, humanizing people that are at that level is like, is
yeah,
important because they're human as well. And I feel like Elon has always been good about um, showing, like, yeah, like his stress and whatnot, like, or yeah, I mean, he's this awkward, like, engineering type person that
yeah,
has a hard time explaining things with how depth or like in depth his brain works and everything like that.
yeah,
But it is good to see. I mean, he's not ashamed of humanizing himself a little bit, right? And it's like,
mm,
um, it's
yeah,
good. He'll
yeah,
he'll say a problem, and then all the directors and stuff are like, oh, geez, there goes our share price, but uh, in like the stock I own in Tesla, right? It's like, for me, it's like, well, I'll just ride this out. It's not really like,
yeah,
okay, I'm gonna get out now because he made that comment. It's more like, wow, that's I want someone like with that capability to be running a company like that versus someone else like Steve Jobs, or somebody that might not have been
mm,
um, as emotionally connected with everybody.
yeah. I, no, that's definitely true. And I liked his interview recently with, I think it was with Wall Street Journal, and he was saying, um, I don't know if you saw it. He said, to spend less time in PowerPoints and more time with your employees and on the ground floor, kind of thing.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And
And I mean, he does that, right? Like even in at SpaceX, he literally sits on the floor with everybody, the engineers, like, so that's like very, I respect that a lot, versus
mm,
being, like you said, that guy who walks in the room and everybody, instead his desk is right there, right? So
yeah, yeah, yeah. No,
cool.
exactly. Yeah, but where can people find you on social media and, like, your website, that kind of thing?
Yeah, so the Klugonics, which is the product development company, it's
Mm,
KLUGONYX.com. And our handle is Klugonics, at Klugonics. And then my personal stuff on Instagram, Jason underscore Klug, KLUG1. And then yeah, I could send you some links and stuff too.
yeah,
And you can check out also like Durai Home, which is that home goods brand that I started, which has grown a lot. That's just Durai Home,
yeah.
DORAI Home.
No, awesome. And that does that ship worldwide? Is that worldwide shipping, or is it kind of like, yeah,
Right now we're only in the U.S., but
over
that's
time?
our future plans, just because we do free shipping. So the cost right now to do international without having a warehouse
Yeah,
in Europe and stuff like that. But those are some of our upcoming next steps, is to get more international fulfillment centers.
yeah. No, that's great. But no, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Jason. Really, really means a lot, and, I wish you all the best in what you're doing. And, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me. I like all the stuff that you're working on and represent. It's that's more people need to be doing that, and I'm always down to support that. So
Yeah, yeah. No, cheers, Jason. I really appreciate it. Really means a lot, and, I'll stay in touch with you, and, I wish you, all the best.
cheers. Likewise, man.
No, you're welcome.